as you pointed out, after the horrors of World War II, there was a consensus around the world that we should never forget, that was one phrase, and never again. Well, the problem with never forget is that you can't remember what you don't understand.
Quite.
And so you could say, well, we obviously don't want to replicate the horrors of the Holocaust, but that to manage that successfully means that we've mapped the causal chain that led to the Holocaust and that we did that accurately so that we're solving the proper problem. And your contention, as far as I can understand it at the moment, is that we reflexively identified something like nationalism as the core of the problem, maybe for the war as such, but also for the exacerbation of ethnic identity that produced the Holocaust. And that the antidote was something like a borderless open society that transcended national identity. Okay, so let's take that apart a little bit. So the first part
I can actually, color that in just to explain how bad it is, right? So at the end of last year, I was speaking at Oxford University for a Roger Scruton lecture. And the topic was, what is English and British identity? And there was a room full of students, presumably all conservative, and I was discussing that topic, what it is to be British, what it is to be English, the differences and what have you in the history. And then at the end, I asked the room, what do you think? Every single student in the room gave a different answer as to what it is to be English, which ranged from ethnicity, i.e. it was an ethno-nationalist argument, all the way to there's no such thing as Englishness and Britishness, and everything in between. No one agreed. That's the conservatives. Now, to add colour to that, our mutual friend Konstantin Kisin has just gone viral on Twitter a week or two ago because there was an argument he had with Fraser Nelson where he argued that Rishi Sunak, our former Prime Minister, might indeed be British, but that he, as a brown Hindu, was not English. Now, that erupted where he was smeared by left-wingers, the classic types, saying that he was arguing for ethno-nationalism, which he was absolutely not. But even within the right, there was no consensus on what that is. Now, I'll just tie it back to my thesis about open society. In 1944, there was a writer called Hans Kohn, who it was similar to Karl Popper, that there's they're thinking about how do we separate the good and the bad here about what a national identity is. And he didn't coin the phrase civic nationalism, but his thesis basically was what would become civic nationalism, which is civic nationalism, good, is democracy, geographic sovereignty or land sovereignty, and a sort of civic duty. And then on the other side, they have ethnicity, which we probably all, it's different from country to country, but we all agree that it's a bad idea to say just ethnicity is on the other side of it's the ethno-nationalism. But they also lumped in culture. So they put the cultural side in the ethno bucket. So you have this growth now. So people, and fast forward 80 years, and you have diversity as our greatest strength, when actually, I happen to believe unity is our greatest strength. Or rather, I should say, diversity without unity, it all kind of crumbles apart. So Britain now is in a place where we can't...
Diversity without unity is indistinguishable from chaos.
Exactly.
Right. And the world is a multicultural place, and it's rife with conflict and war. Right. And there's some naive presumption that if you bring people from all corners of the world to a particular geographical locale, they'll leave all the strife behind them and only bring the fruits of their culture. And that's I guess partly what we're trying to do in this discussion is to determine why people believed that.
Well, they did that as a reaction to the Holocaust.
Yes. And to the war.
To the war. That's also, and that's, by the way, what we're seeing crumbling now. That's why when people are so upset about J.D. Vance's speech in Munich, it's because they can't, anything that goes against the open society ideology, they have this dichotomy, which is a false dichotomy, which means that if you're against that, you must be for the Holocaust.
Right, you must be a fascist.
You must be a fascist. That's why they use the term fascism, because they actually can't code it any other way. Well, they don't even know they have this ideology. They've been swimming in it for so long.